Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Franz Sidney. I'm here to help you to create the life that you want. And one of the things that we can do in our life is to improve the way we look at food. Food is this lovely thing that nourishes us and gives us the mineral that we need and the nutrients and the vitamins. But sometimes it gives us more. It gives us emotions. And right in the fridge, we think that there is the answer to our questions, into our problems. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today with our guest, Maria Lipuma, calling from Oregon. And Maria is a confidence coach, and she is very, very specialized in emotional eating and food addiction. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun today because the first thing is, well, how do I know that I have food cravings? Isn't that normal to crave certain foods in the night or whatever, or to be always in front of the fridge? Is it normal to snack all the time? So, what is the difference between liking something or having a craving and an addiction?
Yes, great question. So, there's a realm of normalcy when you have food cravings. You crave something, you eat it, you enjoy it, and you move on. But people that have or struggle with addictive food cravings, actually it becomes sort of controlling their life. The food, they're craving it, they're overeating it, they're eating foods that they choose not to eat because they're not in alignment with their health goals. And so they can't handle one usually. I recently spoke to someone who has to completely eliminate chocolate, or he can't like have a little bit of chocolate. So a food craving that is problematic would be something that impedes the quality of your life. You are thinking about it maybe obsessively. You feel like you can't eat one, and so you keep it out of the house. And that's really, many people struggle with those kind of addictive food cravings. Even people who have healthy relationship with food might feel like there are some foods that maybe are problematic for them and might choose to keep them out of their home. Yeah. So the real problem is that when people are struggling from food addiction, it is impacting their health, their weight. We know that obesity is a problem in this country, in I think in the world now. And so overindulging in foods that are not really health promoting can be very problematic. And at the end of the day, when you're suffering from any kind of addiction, there's usually guilt and shame and all kinds of emotions connected to it. So the objective is to put food in its proper place. Many people that struggle with emotional eating and food addiction sort of have a love-hate relationship with food. They love it. It makes them feel good in the moment. It satisfies a deep longing craving. But in the bigger picture, it brings shame, it brings guilt, it brings overweight, high blood pressure. There's lots of negative things around being, eating foods that are not really good for you in large quantities. So those, of course, are symptoms of disordered eating. And it's usually a couple of things that go into it. Of course, everybody's experience is very unique, but there are some generalizations that you can make. A lot of people that struggle with emotional eating have learned that maybe it doesn't feel safe to feel their emotions, or they've been programmed to stuff down their emotions. And of course, using food to stuff down your emotion is not a unique thing, and it's not the only way to stuff down your emotions. We're sort of in a culture of addiction where we avoid our emotions, right? We stuff them down. So one of the essential pieces of healing emotional eating is to start to get comfortable with feeling your emotions, not being afraid of your emotions, not being judgmental of your emotions, but allowing yourself to experience your emotions and not feeling like you have to stuff them down. Yeah. I
That's
can go on and on. Do you
that's
have
so good. That's so good, and I like this because you know what we talked about this in a different range of podcast episodes. Because the self-regulations of emotions seems to be quite a culprit nowadays, where we want the instant fix of everything. Maybe we might be feeling like disappointed or rejected or ostracized or frustrated, and we reach for something outside of us to try to dampen down this feeling instead of allowing it to go in and say, what does this mean to me? Why am I feeling like that? And what can I do? So food in that way can be interpreted as the drug of choice that you don't feel as guilty about. You know, if it's not heroin, isn't it? But it's still quite a medication.
Absolutely. And the truth is, though, that many people that have severe disordered eating have likely used it to self-regulate, to self-medicate. There's a lot of connection with trauma and adult childhood experiences that have been problematic. And so it's actually served many people in their formative years. That was my case. I was very overweight as a child, and I used food to self-medicate because my environment was very traumatic. So in a way, it really helped me to navigate a challenging time. However, it became problematic because I was very overweight as a child. And then I started dieting, and that created a whole nother crazy relationship with food and weight and it took me a number of years to resolve all of that, to have a healthy relationship with food and to have a healthy relationship with being in a healthy body. So, but I want to say that it did help me because it was a way of self-medicating. And so often it's a response to trauma. It's a response to trying to navigate a challenging circumstance. But what happens is that as you get older, that becomes a problem in itself. So ultimately, going on another diet or following some kind of rigid food plan can address maybe the symptom, but if you don't address the underlying issues, why it's there in the first place, it's going to be short-lived, or the person will just flip into another addictive behavior to try to self-medicate, right? Yeah.
Yes, I can understand that. So we have this emotional part, and maybe by mistake, we as parents, adults, when we have children, don't we just go and, oh, if you are a good boy, I'm gonna buy you a pizza and ice cream. We never heard the parents saying, I'm gonna buy you a head of lettuce if you're good today. Here's some radish, darling. You deserved it. Never heard of it. And so don't we just tend to make this connection between certain types of food and a reward? So feeling loved, and when you have a birthday or a celebration or a happy time, you're not gonna sit and eat vegetables, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, the emotional connection with food, because there's a reality to it, which is really healthy, right? We associate certain holidays. We're coming up to Easter now. I'm thinking about all the Easter breads my grandmother used to make, and there's a real nostalgia connected to it. But I want to say that, in the nature of my work is that there's a healthy part of, and I'm not to be the judge of what's healthy and what's not unhealthy, but there's something beautiful about that. Remembering my grandmother, remembering the love she poured into her food. I'm Italian, so that was like food was love. And
See.
absolutely. And there's something beautiful about it. The problem is that when we only think of that as the source of love, for instance, I had a client once who she had this uncontrollable craving for ice cream. And she was very disciplined in all areas of her life, but all of a sudden, she just couldn't control herself. She would run out sometimes in the middle of the night to just get ice cream. She needed to have ice cream. When we did some deep work around that, there was a memory. She didn't even realize it until we did the deeper work, that the ice cream there was a memory of when her mom used to come home from the grocery store. She had numerous siblings. There were 6 children. They would all sit around the kitchen table, and mom would give them all ice cream, and they'd have like a family connection. And so she associated the ice cream with the family connection and the love. However, that realization because no amount of ice cream is going to make you feel that love. Maybe a little bit will remind you of it, but really getting on the phone or calling her siblings or even looking at old pictures, filling up the heart with what you're really longing for. Like in my case, thinking about my grandmother and the love that she had and the delight that she had of feeding, that in itself can fill me up, can nourish me. Because food is only one piece of it, right? We are physical, emotional, and spiritual beings. And so we want to nourish all three parts of us. A lot of times when we have disordered eating or addictive behavior, we're trying to satisfy ourselves with one aspect, the physical part. And no amount of food is going to satisfy that emotional or spiritual need to feel that closeness, that connection. So in the case of that client I was referring to, it was just that realization. And it's years later, every once in a while she texts me, still no uncontrollable need to have ice cream. Because the nature of the work I do is it's cognitive somatic. The cravings are in our body. And so we want to use the mind body connection and unravel the subconscious drivers that are keeping us in those patterns. And the patterns are not because there's something wrong with you or you're a bad person or you lack willpower. It's just that they've become adaptive patterns that have you've cultivated that have worked at different points in your life, but then they stop working and they create more negative feelings and negative consequences than the positive of self-regulating.
Excellent. And that's a very good point because although we have this thing of people feeling like, oh, you're judgmental because you're telling me, in the end of the day, sometimes in the family we get some criticism about the food we are indulging in. In the end of the day, there's this thing about feeling guilty, not feeling guilty, and we know that it's wrong and we keep doing it. It's like it's ingrained in us. But once we understand this mechanism, so what would be your way of getting through this? We understand it, and then now we can go home and we're free? Or do you have a special protocol? Is there a method that you use? I know that everyone has their own protocols, so I'm not saying there is only one cure for this, but what do you, as Maria Lipuma, what do you use to help your clients to pass that stage so they can enjoy the food occasionally, but without the cravings? What was possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe very strongly that there's not a one size fits all, and that every situation, even though there's common things, there's very unique experiences. And so working one-on-one and uncovering some of the subconscious beliefs is the first thing that I do with clients. Now, I'm also a food psychology coach. I do some hypnotherapy. I'm a EFT, meridian tapping, a master practitioner. So there's a numerous techniques that I teach my students and clients. However, getting to the core of what the real issue is for them is important. And then unraveling that will usually organically help them to start to shift their behaviors and align more fully with, taking the actions, taking the steps and the actions that they need that will give them the outcome that they're looking for. So just like there's not one size fits all kind of diet, I don't typically give my clients a diet. Most of the people that come to me know exactly what to do. They're just having trouble doing it, or maybe they've been so restrictive, or they're using these patterns to beat themselves up. I like to start with just really going a little deeper into what the real issue is, what the real core of the problem is. And then from there, we can cultivate practices that will help them support the behaviors that they would like to engage in to get them to where they want to go. So it's a very organic process working with me, and it's a very specialized depending on the needs of that particular person. We are all very different in the way we behave and maybe our addictive behaviors, in the way that it even started in the first place. And so there can't be like one formula for all. I don't believe in scripts or formulas. I've been most successful in helping people work through, sometimes it's generational trauma. I had one client who had a lot of issues around starvation and hunger. And when we did the deeper work, she had relatives that were in concentration camps that were literally starving, and she was still playing that out. Now, that awareness was the simple turning point for her to change her behavior. She knew what was driving it now, and she also knew, I'm not there anymore. And the way I can transform this for my ancestors is to make the change in my own life going forward.
Wow, that's incredible. And I do know that in some people, there is this generational trauma that is going through because it's stored in the DNA. And, when we had all this cell splitting, we get all these memories. And we know that even little children can remember things from their ancestry. Why? Because we can inherit phobias, etc., from people that we don't even know who they are, but they were our ancestors. So I'm not surprised if I hear that maybe my grandmother feared something or loved something, and now I absolutely love that. It could be quite the case for a lot of us. So here's my last question. We have quite a few minutes left. So let's say that I have been through everything, counseling and everything, and it's not quite working, but I really have decided, new year, new thing, and we're in March, I'm still in time to do my goals, and I really want to start addressing my food cravings and my addictive eating. Maybe it's not out of hand yet, but I want to take the first step. What would be the first thing I can do today? I literally close the podcast and I'm like, right, I'm going straight out to the fridge and I'm going to take out the food and throw it away? Or am I going to grab a journal? Or am I going to go in meditation? What is the first thing I can do?
Well, I think the first thing you can do is start to take the stress in your life seriously. Because when we are stressed, we are reactive and we're just doing the same things over and over again. Maybe we think we're doing different because we're trying harder doing the same things over and over again. But trying harder is not going to get you to the end. Doing different is. And stress is really at the culprit. It could be the stress in your current life, or it could be holding on to old traumas, old ancestral things that are creating the stress in the body. So I would recommend that you start to really take the stress, the energy body stress that's in you seriously, and do all you can to start to de-stress yourself. Breathing, yoga, walk, music. Those are the things that are going to help you to be more mindful. And when you're more mindful, it gives you some space. It gives you more thoughtfulness. When you're more thoughtful, you can consider, do I want to take these steps? Do I want to do this? Now, again, if you have trauma, if you have an ongoing challenge with this, it's wonderful to get professional help, because it's difficult to unravel it all on your own. I mean, even myself, when I hit bumps, I go to one of my peers or I get professional help. A dentist doesn't do root canal on themselves. No matter how much having somebody to hold you. But stress is really the culprit. Stress could be even our negative self-talk is very stressful, right? So the more you can take the time and make the time to de-stress yourself, and everybody has their own path to doing that. Sometimes listening to music and dancing around the living room will de-stress you. It'll release the stress in your body. Sometimes creating a meditation practice, sometimes going for a walk, finding ways to monitor that. Because, as I said before, when we are stressed, we are reactive. And when we're reactive, we're just spinning our wheels, doing the same things over and over again. When you start to de-stress yourself, you become more thoughtful, you become more aware, you become more conscious. Be conscious of the thoughts that are driving you, because often we have these beliefs, limiting beliefs, that are really driving our behaviors. And they create the thoughts, and the thoughts are maybe, we think we're not worthy enough, or we think there's something wrong with us. And if you have those beliefs, you're going to play them out, you're going to act them out. So I would say the first thing to do is to start to really look at how stressed you are. And not necessarily the circumstances of your life, but the inner stress, the thoughts
Mm,
that you have, the fears that you have. We're living in a culture that is just so fear ridden, and social media and our news and just keeps propagating fear. And fear creates a lot of stress in us. It activates the fight, flight, freeze
mm.
response in our body, which creates the physiology of wanting to self medicate because the body can only take so much stress. And so the wisdom of the body is I need to calm down. And fatty foods and sugary foods can do that in the moment, right? So I
Done.
would say that the first thing you can do is to start to make it your business to start managing your stress and listen to your self-talk. Have some compassion for yourself. Stop beating yourself up. You're not doing this because you're willful, or like I said before, something wrong with you. It's because this is what you've learned. This is how you've learned to adapt.
Mm.
And so now having compassion for yourself and being curious about what's really driving the behavior can be the beginning of changing the behavior.
That's brilliant. And I have a last question, although we are 3 minutes at the end. But I really wanted to ask one thing. How about a person that doesn't have cravings and doesn't have addictive eating, but if they are reading a book or watching TV or they're bored, they eat?
Okay. Yeah, which is not uncommon. Boredom eating is not uncommon. And I believe that at the core of this, it's because they haven't or we haven't, if we're bored, we haven't really tuned into what our purpose is, what excites us, given ourselves permission to do the things that excite and delight us. Sometimes we're repressing that. We don't feel like it's okay to be happy, or we don't feel like we have the time or the energy or the inclination to do things that excite us and bring us joy. And I do believe that when we are in a level of happiness and excitement and joy, first of all, it lifts our energy. It gives us the opportunity to feel good about life and ourselves. And it also helps us
Mhm.
with de-stressing the system and bringing more happiness and joy. And it will usually trickle into the choice we make for the choices we make in our life, because giving ourselves permission to feel good, and I know that that can be an interesting thing because we live in a society where a lot of people are suffering, a lot of people are in pain, and sometimes we might feel like it's how can I be happy, how can I feel good, and all of these people are suffering, and yet we can't bring more happiness into the world by being sad, right? We can't bring more peace into the world by being crazed. So the more we bring happiness, enthusiasm, and I think that that has a lot to do with boredom, because really, if you look at the world with new eyes, the eyes of a child, it's an amazing, vibrant world. How can we be bored, really? I mean, we've become so overstimulated with quick, quick, quick. It's easy to get bored. Even healed children say they're bored. And yet, there's such a vibrant world, and there's so many things in the world, interesting things in the world. So I would relook at that. And sometimes it could be simply giving yourself the time, the space, the energy to explore things that delight you and inspire you and you enjoy. And it's not always a simple thing. Sometimes there are some deeper beliefs and drivers that are keeping you stuck in those patterns. But I find we're living, even though it's a very challenging time, we're living in a very exciting time. I mean, neuroplasticity, we can change the brain. We can change our incarnation. We can heal generational trauma because we can become new beings. And of course, it takes work to do it. However, it also takes work staying stuck and staying sick. So we get to choose where we want to put our energy. Yeah.
That's a great point. It takes work even to be sick, even to to put on too much weight, to keep eating like that, because you're still paying for all the food. That's it. Your energy is going to the wrong place. You might as well use the energy to be happier, which in the long term will make you enjoy all the foods without particular extreme acts, and just being I don't want to say normal because it's not abnormal, but just more kind of at ease with like everyday life and not medicate yourself. So that's a great ending to our episode because I think it gives a lot of hope for you guys that are watching this now. And I love my chocolate. I love my ice cream. Once a week, ice cream is coming. But there is a limit, there is a time when we have to say, oh, all right, I'm going to have a bowl, but not two. I'm not going to have it every day. And that, we have to set those boundaries. And when we find it difficult, then that's the time to start analyzing why is it so difficult? And if we still can't work it out, that's when you go to a therapist, hypnotherapist, or psychotherapist, or an emotional eating addiction specialist, for example, like Maria. They can help you because that's what we do all day. So they know the patterns, they know exactly where you are, and they save you hundreds of hours of research because that's what we do all day. That's why I say it's an investment, isn't it? You get better. So thank you so much for being in my show today, Maria. It's been such a pleasure, and I learned a lot.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure and happy to share the message. There is hope on the other side. And yeah, the more uplifted and happy we are as people, the more we can bring that into the world and make changes in the world that we live in.
So true. These are the last famous words. Remember, we have to nourish ourselves and be happy, but there are other ways of nourishing ourselves properly, aside from eating lots and lots of food. So we can nourish our soul, which is probably craving human connection and nature and very simple things like dance and music and art and all these very simple human activities that make us feel like we are one. And that's an amazing thing because eating like an addiction or a craving is such a solitary, hidden thing. Middle of the
Yeah.
night, hidden in the cupboard, the bottle up there. But when we together celebrate life, then there is a big difference because we can just enjoy it and love this. So thank you again. And I hope you guys find this episode useful. So you are very welcome if you click like and even subscribe and check out the website from Maria. He might be able to help you. So thank you everyone for being here, and I'll see you all next week. Bye bye.
Goodbye.